Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Zoe Mutter, and I'm Deputy Editor of AV Magazine. Hope you've all enjoyed Creative Technologies event so far. We'll be rounding off the day with a panel debate discussing how you create large-scale events with wow factor. Now, joining me on the panel, I have production experts from Wonderworks, TSL, Creative Technology, Unusual Rigging, and Potion Pictures. So to start us off, could you each introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about your company and your role in regards to large-scale events? Start with you, David.
I'm Dave Newton. I'm the Managing Director of Potion Pictures, and we're a content, design and animation graphics company. We work on mainly broadcast shows, big shows such as Strictly Come Dancing and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
My name's Emily Egleton. I work for Unusual Rigging. I'm a design engineer, and we work to facilitate large-scale productions. We do rigging for events, theatre, car shows, Olympics, museums, huge range of different things.
Yep.
Graham Miller. I work for Creative Technology, video supplier. We do video for lots of different events, from conferences to Olympic events. I look after the music and touring side of things at CT.
Hi, I'm Loz Wilcox from TSL Lighting. I'm a director. We look after a whole range of events from corporate through to sporting to automotive and music.
Yep.
Hello, I'm Piers Shepperd, a director from Wonderworks. We do the technical design and coordination for large-scale events, so normally working direct for a client, but bringing together most of the technical functions.
Yep. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. So if we could just start with taking a look at the challenges you face when putting on large-scale events, and that's a question to all of you. So if we start with you, Dave.
We're talking particularly about television. The big challenge we have is turnaround time. A weekly talent show, they won't decide who's in it until a week before. So it's getting to a point where the production is a well-oiled machine, where you are maximising the available time in terms of prep to make sure that you hit rehearsals sort of 4 days after you get the brief with everything you need, and are able to make the changes overnight. So when the live transmission happens, production is entirely happy, and there's no problems on the day. So it's turnaround time, and then the thing that everybody else is going to say is budget as well. It's always at the back of your mind.
Yeah. And what about from a rigging perspective?
From a rigging perspective, because we work with so many different departments, we're facilitating a lot of moving parts. You know, we work with automation companies, with lighting, sound, video, and so coordinating all that and everybody's requirements, making sure everybody has what they need, and making sure that wherever the building or the venue that we're doing it in, that the weight requirements work, that the safety's correct. So that's our main issues.
And do you have anything to add, Greg?
Video-wise, I think there's getting more and more video in live events these days, especially things that you look at EDM festivals and things like that. The scale of we've got quite a lot of festivals that are scaling up at the moment and getting bigger and bigger. So it's deploying all that screen, finding the technical crew that can do it, finding enough of the right product to be able to do it, so it all looks right and does all that. And just scaling up really at the moment is just trying to hit everyone's requirements really.
And actually, Emily, how does that affect the rigging requirements as well, with the screens getting larger and larger?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they get larger, they get heavier, and so we have to be able to work out how to make that work safely, and fit sound into that, and fit lighting into that.
Yeah.
So,
and then Loz, from a lighting...
We work on a series of large one-offs, so the challenges can often be with the scheduling, with how much access we have to the venue, with the constraints that a given venue places on us. But I think part of what we all enjoy is the coming up with solutions to those problems.
Yeah.
You know, it's about trying to work through that with a creative team and come up with something that does fit the budget, but that works with all of the other factors and variables.
Yeah. And Piers, do you agree that screens are getting larger? And do you have any other obstacles you've encountered?
I'd be controversial. I'd say that screens are going to be as large as they're going to be right now. And there's not a massive amount you can go in terms of screen size. You might go resolution, higher quality. But I think I'd take a step back and go, screen technology is an easy solution, but I'd always push the creative team to come up with something that makes the show look different. And I think if we keep saying, well, this show had 500 square metres of video, and this show had 1,000, and Eurovision will have 2,000, and the Olympic ceremonies in Tokyo are going to have this amount. It's a war that we can't win, and actually it should be about creatively what the audience will remember.
Yeah.
So for me, I think although our love is technical and the rigging and the weight and the resolution and the logistics and the trucks and the crew and the power and all of that isn't that interesting necessarily to the audience. And what we're trying to do is steer a client into doing something that will be memorable. And that isn't necessarily about square meterage of screen, I guess. I don't think that's an answer, but it's kind of where I'm pushing people to is to think about their broadcast in a different way, maybe.
And what specifically are you finding audiences are asking for different types of event, from closing ceremonies through to festivals?
You want an experience that you can't get anywhere else, I guess. So you want to see a live, it may be a DJ EDM, or it may be a band, it may be a performance that won't be repeated, I guess. And then the world of immersive theatre, something that rather than you sitting there passively, you're pulled into the performance. And that happens in two ways, either with people or with technology. So I think we're seeing perhaps producers looking for technology as an enabler to immersive, to bring an audience in immersively, rather than just passively watching something.
Yeah, because you've worked with for Secret Cinema as well. You mentioned that earlier, and that's kind of changing the way people are experiencing.
Yeah, I think the work with Secret Cinema is troublesome financially, because what it means is that each audience member has a far higher focus in terms of the production. You're trying to reach out to an individual. So if you're doing a capacity of 2,000 people in a venue, that's really expensive to touch each of them. And we've kind of skirted around it using, I don't know, Pixmob or other devices are available. Pixel tablets or, bracelets that you may hold to try and bring the audience into the production. And Secret Cinema have gone the other way and said, okay, we're going to transport the audience into another world where you come dressed as a character. You might get arrested. You might get, all kinds of things will happen in the journey before you watch a film. And that's been, they're tremendously successful. And lots of corporates have tried to copy that direction. It's difficult technically to support it.
Yeah, and which techniques and technologies in terms of audio are you finding you're using a lot more to engage the audience on a large scale?
I think we're moving more into a fully immersive sound stage. So you rather than hearing stereo or 5.1, you're now using sort of Lisa from L-Acoustics, where rather than just two big hangs, which were heavy for the riggers, you're now having 7 or 8 hangs in an arena and actually getting an orchestra that sounds, you can pinpoint with your ears, the harp or the flautist or whoever it is, you can actually hear it and see it. And I think that level of sound reinforcement is not going to go away. It's expensive, but the audience reaction says it's worth doing it.
Yeah. And Graham, have you encountered any interesting audio technologies that work on a large scale?
To be honest, that's not really my area of expertise.
No. Okay, oh, that's fine.
Although CT does do audio, we, in the music side, we look very much just at the video side of things. So.
Okay, that's fine. And from a content point of view, how is it being used more imaginatively?
I think there's always sort of, it's like you were saying, like there's always a need to try and make it look different. And on, you know, a format that might have been around for sort of 15 years and runs for 15 weeks a year, trying to distinguish each performance. And technology is one of the ways that you can bring in an extra layer of projection or an extra trick and making it look different. That's our biggest challenge, is having the diversity of looks. So that no two performances look the same, even though you might have the same basic setup, you might have the same basic 3 walls of screens and floor projection. It's trying to keep things different, and then from show to show, making sure that you're not repeating yourselves with looks. Yeah,
and then lighting-wise, is there anything you're developing in terms of being extra creative on a large scale, or is video being used more to light events as well?
I think there's more convergence than there ever has been. There are more, it's not the old relationship between a lighting designer and a video director. I think the lines blur more and more, both in terms of control and in content and in marrying both of those two together. And I think the really creative teams out there who are turning all of those elements and making that into one cohesive show is going to be really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I've seen that across the board.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing when you see that. When you see a really cohesive, particularly in live music, when you see a really cohesive show, and it's not just, there's a load of video here or there's a load of cool lighting effects, but it's the whole story and the whole look. Those are the ones that really blow you away, you know. Yeah.
Are there any specific examples of video being used to light that you've worked on?
We worked on a show where the whole studio was lit by one projector, and there were several dancers lined up against a wall which was a projection surface, and you obviously couldn't see the ones that weren't lit. So the content was lighting different areas, and it was one of those ones that we could do live as well, and that was quite an interesting sort of use of technology where the technology was sort of invisible. Like the content was very simple. It was white. It was white shapes that would appear and reveal different dancers, with some green screen dancers appearing, and you had to watch it a couple of times to kind of go, oh, that was a real dancer and that was a fake dancer. So that was a real kind of high point of kind of like going of working very closely with lighting and the technology and the choreography to really pull off a trick that sort of looked like magic.
Because there's quite a broad scale of different large-scale events. You've got festivals, like huge corporate events, opening, closing ceremonies. Do the requirements differ quite a lot, would you say, Graham?
Sorry, what's the question
again? Do the requirements differ quite a lot between the various large-scale events?
I don't know. It's kind of a variation on a theme, isn't it? It tends to be the elements are kind of all there. It's cameras and some kind of display, but it's it's kind of down to the creativity and what they want to do. And again, obviously the size, the scale of it. You've got to scale up for arenas compared to a ballroom somewhere. But,
and from a rigging perspective, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, basically the methods we use to do things don't change a whole lot. There's motors, there's diverts, it's a variation on a theme every time, but it's always different because as the technology develops, we have to keep up with what the other companies are using, how to, hang or move or whatever their particular piece of equipment, how they need it doing.
Yeah, we're getting a lot more requirement for like tracking screens and things like that. And that's spilling across different departments now, where the gag isn't just a big screen; it's the fact that it might be start off here and end up over the audience or something like that. So it's great that all that kind of convergence is great, I think.
And what would you actually consider a large-scale event? Actually, I meant to ask this earlier on. Because they're so huge now. Where's the cut-off point between a medium-sized and large-scale event now? Piers, what would you
I
say?
have no idea. I don't know that a large-scale event is something where you have a broadcast, maybe. I think it's big enough that you're recording it. I don't know. That's quite an interesting, because we do very large-scale events that no one will ever hear of, and it's based on budget.
Yeah.
But not many people are going to go and see it. I guess, yeah, I don't have a... You get the sense of it. When the crew starts getting in the hundreds, it's probably a large-scale event. Maybe it's about the quality of catering. is where you define a large-scale event.
Yeah.
If the crew catering is good enough, it means the production's big enough. Yeah, so it's catering. I judge a large-scale event on catering.
That's fine. That's a good enough answer. Actually, while we're on the subject of broadcast, so you've worked on and Strictly before. Have expectations changed for broadcast projects of large scale?
Absolutely. Every year, the expectations go up. The pixel resolution goes up. The number of screens goes up, and producers and creative directors are magpies, and they've seen a lot of the shows which have taken the Olympic opening ceremonies and the Brits, and they've the shows that have perhaps taken a few months, a few years to prep, and they were like, oh, we like this bit. Could we do this next week?
Yeah.
And you work out ways that you can sort of achieve that. So there's always the expectation to be doing what the Ever shows are doing, and what's being better than the Ever channel, and having higher ratings than the Ever channel, and keeping those production values really, really high.
And which technologies would you say are having the biggest impact in a broadcast event that is also a live event in the studio, like Strictly?
It definitely, the increase in resolution has really helped, and every year, because the pictures are looking much, much sharper, which means we need to spend more time on the animation and the rendering to kind of get sort of photorealistic looks. I think it's maybe just about getting to a point where, because television is still largely shot and watched in HD, that the higher resolution screens, at least in terms of broadcast, are having less impact, because a 6K screen shot in HD isn't going to be more than HD. Perhaps in the close-up it is, but so now it's really looking at what the next thing is going to be. We're getting lots of inquiries about augmented reality, lots of desire to do something that's a bit more interactive and immersive, and it's just sort of waiting for the first show to kind of crack the format that can really use that new technology to its best.
So you don't think it's been achieved really?
I think in sports, there's been a lot of augmented reality used very well. There have been some shows from the Netherlands that have sort of really used it, but those formats haven't been a massive hit here. Because a lot of the entertainment shows, the focus is very much on the storytelling and the performers, and the technology kind of wants to augment that. So you've got, and there's I said earlier about it being a well-oiled machine. We're finding that certain technologies have to be used in a very particular way, and that's not always immediately easy to fit in to the existing machine. And so that's something we've got to kind of consider going forward if we are going to introduce these new technologies. And there's definitely a use for it and a scope for it, but it has to be designed from the beginning to fit in.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my feeling.
And from a lighting point of view, are there any innovations making an impact in the broadcast of large-scale live events?
I think from our point of view, we've seen a lot of advances in control and networking over the last 5 years to enable us to share infrastructure with the other departments. You look at the way that fibre optic technology, which has existed for a long, long time, but has now got to the point where that has kind of, again, cross-pollinated through all of the departments. So that enables us to have, you know, as the events get bigger, the control systems get larger, we start to move into areas where the previous control architecture maybe isn't designed to be that scalable. So we look to other disciplines, to other departments for ways of being able to do that in a robust way. You know, a lot of what the focus that we put on a lot of these events tends to be now more in the pre-production and planning stage than on site. You know, we'd look to turn up on a show site with a proven control system, be that fibre optic or ArtNet or streaming ACN or any of the other control infrastructures that will work straight away. And having people on site that are able to understand that architecture has paid dividends. I mean, it's the same thing, that it's advances in that control infrastructure that enable developments like the remote control follow spot. You know, where we would have to send a guy into the truss and he'd be up there before doors and be sitting up there all evening in an environment that isn't particularly pleasant, and somewhere that we can do a huge amount of risk assessments as to why and where he should be there. I mean, the same technology that enables us to be in our virtual studio here enables us to put a light in the truss and to put the operator 500 metres away with no line of sight, and to be able to control that. And then that adds another level of technology to give the designer a chance to not just to have a fixed beam of light, to add in the same look and feel across the rest of the show, to treat that with colour or gobos or anything else. So it's the last 5 years have seen those technology come more to the fore, and that's really interesting for us.
What developments do you think still need to be made in that area?
I think there's still a long way to go in terms of moving towards that network system from the good of the show. I think there's a lot of duplication still goes on site, and a lot of that is to do with the scheduling and with the time that we have available to do it. You know, I think we look to some of those mega events, those opening ceremonies, the Eurovision Song Contest, that kind of scale of event, who are blessed with a longer schedule and a bigger budget, who are able to put those networks in place right from the word go, and to plan that lighting and video and sound and broadcast will share the same infrastructure.
Yeah. Actually, carry on.
Well, I think we'll be able to do the same as time progresses. We'll be able to do the same thing on the shows that maybe are on site for a week or two.
Yeah. And how do you actually balance all of those elements like audio, visual, lighting, rigging to create an immersive experience? How do you handle that? Piers?
In what way? In terms of...
So they all work in unison, like the video, the lighting?
I'd say it starts with education, that often the creative teams, certainly from a ceremonies point of view, the creative teams don't understand what's possible. So it's about a basic education on gravity, wind, whatever it may be, but very simple things, and then starting to go, and the menace of YouTube or Vimeo is it's difficult to describe how dangerous that is for creative teams around the world to sit on YouTube and go, I like that, I like those robots, that was really good that they did that, and then not understand what was done live, what was done as a pre-recorded video. So it's education, it's about going, you know, for me it's about transitions between segments that make a show work. It is what catches everyone out. But it's about, once you've done the education, doing the time in a studio so that people understand how music, what, you know, the live performance, the scenery can work together. And breaking it down into bite-sized chunks so that people get it. Because what we do is really complex, and the end result for a production, if we're doing our job well, looks slick and well finished. And it's slightly misleading because you're not aware of the trusses and you're not aware of the reinforcement on the stage, and you're not aware of the fibre network. And all of those technologies absolutely come into play, but what we're trying to do is give the impression of a very slick, finished product. And creative teams sometimes don't understand quite how long and how much planning it takes to implement that.
Yeah.
So I'd say education. I always try and get the creative team to really engage in what the technology can do and what it can't do early.
Yeah, there's also like quite simple limitations in weight loading and things like that people don't take into account.
Yeah.
You know, they assume that their bit of set can just move wherever they want it, at whatever speed they want it. But then, you know, if you're in a tent or, you know, something that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, you have to take into account the weight that you have available and how you're going to split that between the departments and who gets the priority in certain things and what ways can we, you know, ground support structures or whatever to take bits out of the equation. And
so it's very much a collaborative process, educating them early on.
Absolutely, yeah, very much so.
And do you want to add something?
So I was going to say, I think creatively, as things get more complex, that teamwork and that communication element just is so vital, because there's so many experts coming in who've each got their own sort of particular field. So bringing them all together and hopefully having someone who's also got an oversight of what that big picture is, both creatively and technically, and can bring that all together. That's sort of really vital, and it's harder as there's more and more elements that need to be thought about.
Yeah. And have you noticed different types of event, like borrowing from each other, because there's quite a lot of crossover? I know, Graham, you mentioned you've been using some of the sports techniques, like the Adele tour.
Yeah, we found that there's quite a lot of equipment we invested in for a lot of our sport market stuff. And some of our integrated network stuff, so like CCTV cameras and you know, back to like networking and stuff like that. So an example we had was on the Adele tour. We when we did the stadium shows, the video control and bizarrely the monitor engineer were actually outside the stadium. They were 300 meters away from the stage, and we did all the connections from control to the screen in the middle of the stadium, and all the, you know, a lot of the camera feeds backwards and forwards were all done through that technology, which we kind of taken from the sports work we'd done. And it ended up with the monitor engineer had his own remote cameras, so he could see what was happening under the stage, where the backline guys were, and on the stage, so that he could, you know, basically have a really good idea of what's going on, even though he was actually outside the stadium. So yeah.
So have you been doing that quite a lot for different tours?
That's kind of unusual, but it was the only solution for Adele. That's how that had to be, and so we had to look, you know, at what we had and how we could make that work. But we do borrow a lot from other. Yeah, it's great because CT's got quite a broad range of clients and requirements, and we all look at each other and see what we're doing. You know, maybe the way we package things for music, some of the other guys are picking up and using that for some of their events, and bits of technology that are bought for one particular reason then becomes, you know, like what might have been like a digital signage system then becomes the main display for festivals with social media interaction. So, you know, we're kind of borrowing from lots of different events, which you know tends to work quite well.
Has anyone else noticed that kind of crossover between the different types of event in terms of technologies and techniques?
I think you wouldn't be doing what we do for a living if you weren't enviously looking at other events going, I mean, you know, and I speak from a position of doing quite large-scale ceremonies. I still look at other events going, how do they do that? You know, Eurovision, I love looking at what Ola and those guys are doing. And I love also, which is important that all of us have to do, is go back to basics. You know, I'd like to go and see a circus show where it's just mainly human-powered. I like to go and see a really, you know, loud music touring show, be it whatever it is, just so you go, oh yeah, I'd forgotten that. That works really well, you know. And I always try and introduce a mirror ball, or, you know, just like old technology sometimes can be fantastic, and you have to remember to keep your creative energy sort of fulfilled, I think. So go and look at other events. So yeah, I'm constantly looking at other things going, oh wow, that was cool.
Yeah.
And it was relatively easy to do.
And are there any, did you have something?
I think the good creatives also kind of cross-pollinate between disciplines.
Yeah.
You will find good designers who work in theatre, but also on television and also in corporate events and also in music. And I think the really talented creative teams are able to kind of take those hats on and off and adjust their design around whichever medium they're working for.
Yeah. And which innovations would you say are having the most impact on your day-to-day life at the moment, your role? Just I'll ask everyone that question actually.
For us, it's the getting more to photorealistic renderers, and then starting to look at real-time renderers. So, as you know, the computer games are getting more photorealistic. The same technology is sort of enabling sort of animation to do more real-time graphics. And if we were able to sort of cut down or cut out completely render time, then it suddenly increases the amount of flexibility and interaction that we can have on set.
Yep. And Emily?
I think that as venues get more untraditional venues, that has an impact for us in that the technology that we use on the front end stays the same, but what we're doing in the back end to drawing a show or an event, where we might in the past, it's very simple, but might have drawn something in 2D. Now we can't do that because we can't see the way that everything interacts with each other. So even though it's not particularly innovative, the change to using 3D for us to draw is very helpful.
Yeah. So it's very much the pre-production phase.
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
Being
very much so.
Influenced by. Okay. And Greg?
Well, the obvious thing is LED technology.
Yep.
It's getting brighter, lighter, more see-through. Projectors are getting brighter. That's kind of the obvious stuff, though. I think, there's, things like this, all this augmented reality, and even virtual reality. Not so much in a live event, but we are doing some stuff where we're doing like pre-production, where we're looking at a tour, and we built the stage, in VR, so we could then take a headset to the artist, and they could put it on, and they could stand in the O2 and look around and see what it's like to be on stage, and what it's like in front of house to see what it's all going to look like. And it's great. I could look around the back, and it was like a staggered screen design. It was like, we need a cable pick there because we can't get the cables out this way. So I think stuff like that's quite interesting.
So it's not just using VR for the experience. It's beforehand.
Not so much. Not so much. I think it's a tool that's pretty useful.
I've had shows where you've used VR actually more from a sort of marketing point of view and from a planning in the sense of sitting yourself somewhere in the auditorium of the theatre and looking on the stage and seeing how, ticket pricing. What can I see from that seat and how much can I charge for the ticket?
Yeah, even like camera positions and things like that. You can do all that from there. So, it's pretty good.
I think we could talk about the kit until the end of days, but I think we've really enjoyed the way that things like collaboration tools have come on. The difference now in being able to work in something like Google Sheets, where the entire creative department can have access to the same document at the same time, and everybody's changes are updated, and everybody can collaborate rather than sending one document together. That, as we can do it, I appreciate when it comes to things like engineering drawings, there are certain limitations with having everybody having access to the same time. But just those basics, things like WhatsApp, things like being able to communicate quickly, simply to everybody. I know that's not necessarily something from our industry, but that's changed the way that we've worked.
Yeah, fantastic. And Piers, anything?
I think it's the same. Wonderworks, our company, will only draw in 3D. The difference I think we probably notice in the office is the speed of design iterations. That, yes, CAD is the bedrock for us because it allows us to manufacture as well, but we're now offering Unity modelling, we're offering animation. So whereas before we do just a CAD layout drawing, we're now offering, on bigger projects, a Unity walkthrough model. Right. We're offering animations pretty much as standard on every project. And it's the speed of clients being able to look at it, understand it, and change it again and again. So I think what we're finding is more work is going to pre-production, and the time on site is getting compressed, and that's bad because the crew and and you talk to a big audio company or CT, walk around their warehouse, it's still full of flight cases. That gear is not getting any, maybe smaller, but it's still about truckloads of kit, crew, rigging. You go and look at Unusual and look how many kilometres of truss they have and chain hoists, and none of that's going away. And the same with loudspeakers. If you want to really feel the sound, it requires a big volume of PA. It might be lighter. So it's interesting how we have this pre-production is definitely getting more sophisticated, but you still have truckloads of gear, and the truck count hasn't gone down. I still think a big rock and roll show, Adele, will be the same as the Stones in 1980. They're still mammoth in those terms. So it's kind of interesting how the volume of kit we take on a mega event, I don't think it's changed. Things have, like power has gone down. We don't have quite as many generators, but so it's twofold, I think. It's design gets quicker, but the technology, we all think the technology is smaller and lighter and more. It is, but there's a lot of it. Right. It's a weird thing when you look at a load-in happening. It's still lighting. It's still trucks full of lighting. Yeah. It hasn't come down to the dance floor on that. So it's
And also, in terms of the different venues you're working in, what challenges have you faced there? Are there any specific examples? And then how did you resolve that issue? Emily, have you got any?
I'm working currently on a show which is a large-scale event, which is in a tent. And the creatives come up with a beautiful design. It's fantastic. But the challenge for us is that the tent has a specific capacity in weight loading. And so it's working out whether we're using hoists, kinesis-controlled hoists, or whether we're using winches, and where we put those, whether they're hanging from the roof of the tent, what does that impact on what we can hang in the tent, and what the balance is really the equipment that you have to, that's not going to be seen by the audience, so that you want a lot of the capacity to be taken up by the things that are going to wow the audience, not the way that happens, the equipment that makes it happen.
Yeah. And Graham, have you encountered any unusual sites or?
I don't know. The only thing I'm thinking about is like on things like ceremonies or stuff where you've got like elements that have to come on, and I guess things like Super Bowls and all that, where you've actually got to come on. We don't do them, but things like that where you've got to put together a system to deploy equipment really quickly. And I think that's part of the fun of it. It's like making solutions, whether it's like a rolling battery-powered LED screen that can come on at a festival and be deployed somewhere that you can't get cable to, or things like that. I think there's increasingly there's more and more requirements for, and again, it's always about something new. Everyone's looking for the new gag, and tracking helps us a lot with things. You can put projectors into places much quicker than you probably could have done before, with auto calibration and things like that. But the technology is getting better. But all of this really comes down to increased skill set in crew as well. And that's an increasing problem, because it's not just a case of getting people to push bits of kit in and plug things in. There's more and more sophisticated across all the disciplines now. And that's quite a hard thing to find, that endless supply of talented crew.
Yeah. And I just wanted to go back to emerging technologies like VR, AR, and mixed reality, more for the experience side of things. What are your views on the use of that kind of technology? Do you think it's more of a, can it add to the experience, or is it more of a gimmick?
I really like augmented reality. It's still, for me, it's still out there. We used it in Pyeongchang, and I thought it was quite, it helped creatively. Virtual reality sucks. I think for an audience experience, I don't think it will work. For design and for medical or specialist industries, perfect. And you'll see it, CT have it here. Brilliant, we use it, love it. But for an audience to sit in a room wearing goggles and expect them to enjoy it, yeah, it's cool, but I think that's always going to remain a bit niche.
Yeah.
And virtual reality's been around for ages, isn't it? I remember playing Second Life or whatever it was ages ago. And it's never ever moved really beyond that kind of niche. And gaming is not niche anymore, no, I'm not convinced by virtual reality in large-scale events.
You think it's more mixed reality or augmented?
Augmented, yeah, I can see it. We're fitting on a Steadicam. We're able to use a Steadicam or a Wirecam and augment content onto that shot. Yeah, we're definitely doing it. You can argue about the audience being shortchanged, thinking it's a live event. But we're already there anyway with what we're doing with pre-recorded content. So there's an honesty thing that we need to address in terms of the audience think that it's real.
Yeah.
And we're getting so good at it that you're not sure anymore. That's dangerous because it then means you don't bother to do the big effect. But yeah, virtual reality, I'm not convinced.
Are there any types of large event you think it does add to, David?
I mean, for broadcast, when you are more focused on the people at home than the people in the room, it's sort of, you don't mind about cheating them as much. But you know, a big arena event, especially one that people have paid to be to, I can see why augmented reality does feel like a little bit of a cheat. Because there's two experiences there, and a lot of effort's gone to doing something that the arena full of people aren't going to get to experience. But with broadcasts where you essentially don't care about the people in the room, they've not paid for their tickets. They're not there as the most important thing is the 17 million people at home. Then maybe that's a more useful way of doing it. Yeah. But it's when we have done it and the warm-up guy explains what's going to be happening and to the audience, it maybe it does kill the atmosphere a little bit when the warm-up guy's going on and saying, well, you've just got to imagine there is going to be a dragon swooping in here. Then they're not going to imagine it. They're going to watch it on TV going, God, I don't remember seeing that dragon when they recorded it. So, yeah, it's possible, but there is television, live shows are, as ratings are going down on television in general, and catch-up is going up, but the exception to that is live shows, because it's watching it all together, and then if you start adding bits that aren't live, that are either computer generated sort of, and even if they're being composited live, they're still not really there. Yeah. It's taking a little bit away from the live experience. Yeah. So I think it's possible, but there's dangers to it.
Right. And has anyone else had any experiences of it working or not working?
Well, I think from a lighting perspective, with all of the visual mediums, the thought of your audience walking into the room and putting on a pair of headsets and sitting down should probably fill everybody with the same sense of dread that it fills me. It's that they're taking away a fundamental part or changing a fundamental part of what we all do. Yeah. And it's a lot of the things that Piers said about virtual reality has been around for 30 odd years and occupies a similar niche. But I think the augmented reality stuff is really interesting. I think David touched on earlier about the big sporting events. You look at things like the America's Cup, the yacht racing series, where they're able to use augmented reality from helicopter camera shots to bring something. Yacht racing is a notoriously difficult spectator sport. especially from being on the ground where you don't necessarily have a particular field of view as to who might be winning a race or anything about the race that's going on. But to see that shot and have an overlay that explains to you exactly what the teams are doing turns a kind of niche sporting event into something which is absolutely accessible to a wider audience.
And what about other fairly new technologies like holographic effects or drones?
Well, see, I think ultimately, amongst all of us, we can give creatives this amazing toy box of kit to play with, and it's really down to them what they want to do with it. And you know, so that's, you know, and if the technology is not used in a clever way to make something great, then it just ends up being lots of elements. You know, I went to a Metallica show, which was a great show, but halfway through, there was a load of drones flew out the stage and kind of flew around over their head for no reason, and then flew back into the stage again. It's just, unless it's part of the story, it just doesn't make sense. It's just, you know, kit for kit's sake, and I think that's down to the creatives to do it. We're happy to get involved and do everything we can, but it needs to be used right, I think.
Yeah, so it's doing it not just for impact, but
into
the narrative.
Yeah, I think so.
And just moving back to rigging, your and in terms of the safety side of things, how have you seen the developments, or how has that got more difficult as the large-scale events have got bigger and bigger, really?
I mean, it's obviously a major factor. It's one of the main things that we think about.
Yeah.
How can we make something safe with, especially when, you know, equipment gets bigger and heavier and the venues get bigger and with less infrastructure, how can we, you know, the safety factor of motors and, you know, whether we have to put, if something's hanging above an audience, what the safety factor is there. And, you know, designing from a design engineer's point of view, your thing is only as safe as the smallest element. You know, the safety factor on the bolt, for example. That's, you know, if that's less than everything else, then it doesn't matter how strong everything else is. It's that one element that you have to consider. So you do have to build a lot of safety into things, especially if they're over an audience, I would say.
And how do you go about testing any new solutions? This is for every type of product, really. How do you actually test anything brand new and work out whether it's...
For me, it's money. You have it's money. To introduce something new, you have to pay to prototype it, you have to workshop it, and you pay for that in time. You may have to pay a manufacturer to develop it. So often we'll get 2 or 3 companies together and go, right, we're going to give you some development money, which will just cover your costs. You're never going to be rich, but this is what we want to do. And prototype it, try it, break it, and then get the creative team to look at it and go, is this what you imagined?
Yeah.
And to introduce something new, somebody has to spend quite a lot of cash, I would suggest. Drones being a good example of that. To really do something new with drones, it needs someone like Intel who can really pump a lot of research money into it to move that whole industry forward, which they're doing, and now lots of other people have that technology.
So is budget still an issue across the board? I know some of you mentioned that earlier. Is that
always.
Just always a challenge. How do you get around that then? Are there any solutions you found in terms of when you're working on
If I work it out, I'll let you know.
No, just an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
I think that isn't that the role. Maybe that's the role of those large mega events.
Yeah.
That you can go, okay, we're going to spend money developing something because people expect something new and unique that hasn't been seen before. And the only way you can really do that is either creatively string together a heartfelt moment that really resonates with an audience, or throw money at it. And that's the joy of the job. You could go both ways. You could have a single person singing a song which actually can move a worldwide audience to tears.
Yeah.
Or you have to throw millions of dollars at something and people go, wow. And it can happen both ways.
It's not always the technology that creates the moment.
No.
Very true. But leading on to my next question, which is about technology, which do you see having the biggest impact moving forward? Are there any particular, well, not specific products, but a type of innovation or an area that's developing that you're excited about?
I think one of the things that everyone sort of touched on is that it's the uses of the technology rather than the technology itself. Yeah. So it's seeing something like this or seeing drones, and then it's the idea around it, and it's almost always going to be the non-obvious idea that is suddenly going to be the video that goes viral and going, and it's probably, the technology probably already exists and is being used, but no one's quite thought about using it in that particular way that then makes it really exciting. And then there'll be lots of creative directors and producers who will see the Vimeo link and copy it, and then it will be everywhere. Yeah. But it's that very first idea of going, this technology exists and this technology exists. We combine it, and that creative spark that sets it off. And I don't know what that's going to be. Everyone's doing.
No. Okay. Does anyone else have anything?
I think tracking. I think tracking is really interesting. You know, in lighting and particularly in video, I think tracking with projection is opening up a load of. It's been done. There's a lot of stuff already out there, and it's been going for years. But I still think there's future potential there. I think opens up a load of new opportunities. And again, I think also tracking with cameras as well. I think that's something that still hasn't quite reached its full potential yet.
I think it's the whole picture. I think the UK have been at the forefront of the creative industries globally for 70 years. You know, it's a great export for us. And I think events like this, where you're bringing people together and allowing them to look at new technologies, even if the technology that they're being shown and the direct application of that technology isn't necessarily something that they would choose to recreate or reproduce, sowing the seed that the technology exists. We have a great creative team that's around us who can go, I've seen an idea, and I wonder if it would just do this. And I think then the process starts again. And I think that's the benefit of getting everybody together in an environment like this, is being able to show off the new things and hopefully sow those seeds that lead on to events in the future.
Yep.
I mean, for me, the panellists have covered it.
Yeah.
It's about creative individuals being able to harness this technology. I mean, the one is going to make a massive difference is just the way that broadcasts happen and pictures are distributed, really boring those fibre networks. It's going to save a lot of crew flying. That's going to be quite disruptive, I think. But yeah, it's the ability of a human creative team to look at something and go, and propose something new, and we all go, that won't work, until you look at it and you go, oh God, why didn't we do that?
Yeah.
So it's about, my interest is always watching an individual's ability to grasp what we've been looking at for ages and use it in a totally new way. Yeah. I think that's where we're all going to look at and go, wow, that was incredible.
Fantastic. I've just noticed we're running a little over time, but I just wanted to finish with any lessons that you've learnt, or that if you found out the key to creating a wow large-scale event, what would be the lesson? You don't all have to answer this, it's just if anyone has learnt a particularly important lesson throughout their career. It doesn't have to be related.
Lots of lessons.
Is it catering?
It doesn't have to be relating to technology, it can be
collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration. And listen. Yeah. You know, we talk about technology, and I know the focus here is on technology, but the risk is always technology for technology's sake, and being blinkered by something where you think is a great idea that might not necessarily fit the event or the environment that you're trying to put it into. So for me, it's just listen. You know, the show, the customer, the client, the event will present itself, and don't go down the path of trying to shoehorn something into it unnecessarily.
Fantastic. That's
people. I'd always
the team
people
as well as the technology.
I don't care about the people. I did an interview once, and somebody said, Piers, why are you so good at technical? And it's really interesting. I'm not very good at technical, but I'm brilliant at sussing people out. And the technology, so, you know, I don't care about the truss or the motors. I want to meet the crew chief and the riggers. I don't really care about this camera tracking thing here. I want to meet the guy over there who can run it and get a sense that they know what they're talking about. And if I can get the crew and the project managers and the contractors motivated, all the techie stuff will happen. Yeah. So it's, for me, the life lesson always on big productions is find the people who are going to deliver it, and then all of the other complicated stuff will happen.
Yeah, so the personal connection and collaboration is as important as innovation. Great. Well, if we've got time for any questions from the audience.
I've got one for Piers.
Oh, no.
We talked about it a little bit yesterday, and you just touched upon it with people, but one of the problems I think we all see in the events industry at the moment is getting the next generation of young people and enough people joining the industry at the moment. Across all disciplines, I think we all see the same thing. Do you see a solution to that? Do you think we should be engaging with them in a different way, or does the live events industry need to change in some way, shape or form?
Ooh. I don't know, it's kind of one I feel quite strongly about. It's a massive problem, and I think the current up-and-coming generation don't understand what we do, probably don't have a massive interest. And so if you put us all under the creative industries banner, in the UK, the creative industries are bigger than motor manufacturing, oil, aerospace. We're huge, and yet if you go to a school, nobody knows that it's a career option. So I'd say this isn't about the theatre schools. It's about school education and people being aware that there is an industry that they can work in, which is fascinating, is full of opportunity. You can get well paid, maybe. But it's about going actually into schools and saying this is an opportunity. I do quite a lot of talks for schools, and most pupils are completely unaware when they watch a music tour or a ceremony that there are more people behind the cameras or behind the scenes than they see on the stage. They have no idea. They imagine that there are 10 technicians putting on an opening ceremony. And when I say no, there are 2,500 people working, they just don't understand that. So it's education, I guess. And yeah, we have to be a lot more proactive. If we want to get good people, we have to go out and find them.
Do you think there need to be more apprenticeship schemes and more university courses even in...
Getting people more involved in STEM subjects, I think, is a big thing, especially girls.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's about that. I mean, we're a really small sort of example, but we bring in people who do apprentice or do work experience, and we just go, look, this is an opportunity, and people are just unaware of it as a career choice. And as soon as you start opening up and going, well, actually, you could do this or this or this or this and it covers the, you don't just have to be an actor or a singer or a rap artist. There are all these other jobs which are, I work with the National Youth Theatre, and you have teams of people across the UK, kids, who want to be actors. It's incredible acting. The average, sorry, it's just one of my... Do you know what the average wage of an actor is? It's something like £14,000. It's definitely not a good career option. And if you go, well, do you want to be a video technician working for CT? I might be wrong, Mr. Crump, but I bet they get paid a little bit more than what but they're completely unaware of it.
Yeah.
And
So you think it's important to organise more events like this where they have a dedicated day on Friday?
Yeah, I think
it's
brilliant. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope that was useful for the audience, and thank you to all our panellists. Yeah.